Earthquakers, and I'm your ring, your gangsta, Brazil. It's a vibration. It's instant. Resonate. It's that curl in the afro, that twang on the guitar, that Ravi Shankar 12 string on the sitar, that Coltrane saxophone blowing like a cigar, Malcolm by the window with his finger on the trigger, the chakras the doctors can't find with x-rays, the pain in your gut is passed down from ex-slaves, the black Buddha within, on the lotus sitting on the dock of the bay, getting red with Otis, that soul sonic bambada, gold teeth ebonics, James Brown in the pocket, Mississippi gut bucket chi overflowing like rum, the vibration of your palm slapping against a goat skin drum, the soul in the folk song, the story in the tat, the old school drop top with bass in the back. It's my natural disposition, I was born like that. It's engraved in my soul like grooves in the wax. I got soul power.
We will shake the very foundation.
Is that real? Soul power. Yeah. Rocking that soul power. Check it out. Hey, I want you to take a walk with me. Yeah. This that nigga town poem by Al Prentice Carter, the murder that made Martin a martyr. This is that break from the cycle that ended with Carmichael up in Lowndes County, Alabama, cocking them hammers. It was the white rooster versus them black jungle cats. Made them lift up their sheets, take a peek under that. The stench of a rotten system, ill-gotten. And if you listen, you can hear survivors off in the distance. The undeniable spirit of the fire, the old reliable, unseen force when you need it that takes you higher. It's the Rhodes keys in the church choir. It's the heat, it's the speakers, the turntables and wires. It's desire, it's the beautiful act that inspires crowds to riot. And non-believers left with their jaws dropped in silence. The difference between philosophical non-violence and black power. It's karma, we're coming for ours.
We will shake the very foundations of this unjust society and put an end to poverty as we walk together.
Oh, we even a mic in him. Is this on now? Okay, can you hear me now? Can you hear me now? Okay, I can hear myself. All right. Good evening, comrades. Amazing. Welcome to our closing module, Module 4, Prospects for Struggle today. All right. So, I don't have to tell you this, but we know that the fight for liberation is a long one that ebbs and flows and continues to build off past victories and setbacks. And throughout the course, we've spent weeks diving into history, from the origins of capitalist slavery to the resistance of our people in Haiti and in the U.S. South, to studying the strategies and lessons of the Black freedom struggle in the U.S. and internationally, including Southern organizing and the Black Belt thesis, how Black communist women strategized and agitated for struggle, how movements navigated repression, and most importantly, why internationalism is vital for our struggle. So today we'll begin our last module of the course, which personally in my eyes is really the most pivotal one, where we really confront our task ahead and answer the question, what do we do now? How do we organize for liberation in these times of escalating crises and imperialist violence? And most importantly, how do we win? Because that's what we're here for, right? Right? We're not just struggling for struggle's sake. We're here to win. And we can't win if we don't struggle, correct? We cannot win if we don't struggle, because staying home and doing nothing is not an option. Because if we can't win if we don't reflect, analyze, and learn the lessons from our past, especially in moments in which a capitalist system was laid bare, and we saw it for what it really was, a system that is not that fundamentally is incapable of offering any real solutions, but a system that's inherently sexist, racist, and violent. And moments like this in the movement against police brutality that we saw in 2012 and 2014 and 2020, and now in the movement for Palestine, is when we really see these truths come to light. And I can't think of a more fitting time for this class than the time that we're in now. A similar moment in which a reignition of a mass movement is dramatically shifting the consciousness of millions to see that our conditions won't get better unless we fight for it, to see that there's no choice but to fight, that like our ancestors, we don't have the luxury of doing nothing, or, I'm gonna throw some shade, staying our black asses at home. Wow. I was gonna take that out, but I was like, you know what? So I'm really excited for today's class, From Ferguson to Minneapolis, A New Era of Rebellions, where we study the conditions that gave rise to the mass uprisings against police violence and the lessons from these struggles, so that we can practice our capacity to actually critically reflect and analyze these historic moments, moments that transformed many of us, I'm sure, especially me for sure, and millions around the room, so that we can clarify our tasks and our responsibility. So that instead of seeing Nancy Pelosi in the future with a keffiyeh, what we actually see is an arms embargo and a free Palestine in our lifetime. Okay, all right, nice. So with that, I'm really excited to welcome our two comrades that will be joining us for class. First, we have Phil Agnew, who's a community organizer originally from Chicago and now based in Miami. Phil is a co-founder of Dream Defenders and is now the co-director of Black Men Build. And, hold on. Period. We also have Ekundayo Igeleke, who is a popular educator, writer, photographer, scholar, national strategist, and grassroots organizer with over 10 years of experience. He's currently the Director of Education and Culture with Black Men Builds, the founder of Culture Dream Lab, and a PhD candidate in Comparative Studies and Black Studies at The Ohio State University. So, give it up for Phil and Ekundayo from Black Men Builds.
One, two. Just making sure y'all awake.
Yes. Oh, this is beautiful.
Yeah.
How y'all doing? Good. It's so good to see y'all. It's so good to be here with you all. This is an awesome task and an awesome responsibility, one that we don't take lightly, especially in this moment. So we got a lot to go over tonight, and hopefully you all stay with us throughout the entire course of this. My name is Philip Agnew, and as laid out in the biography, I'm the co-director for Black Men Build. I'm very happy to be here with you all this evening.
Peace, y'all. Peace.
Peace.
My name's Ekundayo, and I'm really grateful to be here to build with y'all. As Phil said, and as Saidi said, we do have a task in front of us, and that task is to talk about this particular period, but there's so much packed in there.
Yeah.
As Sadie said, I am the Director of Political Education and Culture with Black Men Build, and that's the capacity I want to talk with y'all today about.
Yeah. So we're going to encourage a lot of participation from you all. We have people roving with mics, so there'll be opportunities for us to hear your amazing voices. We enjoy it when people put both of their hands together like this in a rhythm called clapping. We enjoy that. We love that. We're going to have moments where you can talk to your neighbor. All of the basic things that we do, we want all of them. We're bringing them all of those things to bear today. We also want to give a special shout out to Dr. Randolph Carr, who's not in here. This is one of those opportunities. Yes, he's not in here. Dr. Randolph Carr is our field secretary for Black Men Build. Our PE team is here. Most of them are in the New York hub right here, represented here. We couldn't have put this presentation together without their assistance, without their guidance, without their leadership. So we want to give them the respect that they deserve for all of their work that they put in. And want to make special note of our dear elder, Brother Hiram Rivera, who's here in the front row here. We couldn't do it without your intrepid soul, brother.
Our beloved OG.
Our beloved. All right, so real quick, I'm gonna just tell you all a little bit about how I came into the movement. A very, very abridged version, right? I was radicalized by my father. My father is the smartest man that I know. a genius, a well-read brother, didn't go to college, dropped out of high school, but he was on Jeopardy when I was in the 3rd grade. He was an incredibly learned man. He sold books. He would drive us around Chicago and tell us about how the city was made, how the mayor Daley was a mobster, and how they killed Harold Washington, and all manner of things that you know if you live in Chicago. I was radicalized by him. I was politicized by attending the Florida Agricultural and Mechanical University in Tallahassee, Florida, the #1 HBCU in the entire world. And these are facts. And I wouldn't be the person that I am if it wasn't because of my mother, my father growing up in Chicago and going to this black college that told me that I have a duty and a responsibility. I first came into organizing more than activism in 2005 after the murder of a young man named Martin Lee Anderson. He was murdered by the boot camp guards in Bay County, Florida on videotape. And this case singularly transformed the trajectory of my entire life. And so that moment, right, going to college, being in Florida A&M University, a black college, witnessing this happening and then having black attorneys calling us and saying, what are you student leaders gonna do about this? This transformed everything about what I knew myself to be. I had no idea, right, that anger, that animosity, that angst that I grew up with growing up poor on the south side of Chicago could be channeled into a direction, into a organizing, into activism, right? And it was intoxicating, that moment for me. And so that is the moment that kind of constructed my consciousness, and that is what led me on this path 20 years ago. Yes, I went to college 20 years ago, believe it or not. And so that moment is singularly important for me, and I want to give some space for Brother Ekundayo to let you know when he came into the movement.
Yeah, thank you, Phil. I was born to Southern Baptist and Nigerian parents in Toledo, Ohio, the Glass City. And my parents were, particularly my mother, was very much focused on making sure I understood that I was a black boy in this country. And so we went to Juneteenth festivals, we went to black bookstores, we watched movies. She put me on to make sure I understood the musical history, the trajectory of the musical tradition. And so it was very much paramount to my development. And my father, migrated to this country in the 70s. And just from his presence, his very presence of how he had to come to this country, what he had to deal with, was very much top of mind. My dad, it was very much I wouldn't say no nonsense, that's not it, but he was very much like, it's either this way or that way. You know what I'm saying? And we're gonna go that way. You see what I'm saying? Meaning, what other responsibility do we have than to be good, to be great? For him, it was very much, if a student has all A's and you got 7 A's and a B, that's not good enough, right? And so that is very much a story of being black in America, right? Of having to position yourself against whiteness. And so I evolved from that. I went to the University of Cincinnati many years ago. And when I was on campus, Oscar Grant in 2009 was killed. Oscar Grant was killed in Oakland. And like students do, we didn't know what we was doing, but we knew we wanted to do something. We wanted to represent for this brother. But when what really radicalized me, I guess what really put me into a position where I felt like I needed to be responsible, is I had a mentee. His name was Everett Howard, and he was killed by the police on our campus in 2012. He was tased. Police were breaking up a fight. He went to a cardiac arrest, and he died. And from that point on, there was no turning back for me, right, for how I was going to engage in the struggle, how I wanted to support his family, which, again, became this trajectory of the Black Lives Matter movement, et cetera, right? And so that's why I'm here, and that's why I've been in struggle, in organization like Phil.
So, go ahead. There it is.
Yeah.
So as we said, we're both members, leaders within Black Men Build. Whenever Black Men Build does anything, we start off our meetings with our values pledge. So we're going to ask you all to join us. Nothing is disagreeable, so you just repeat after us. We are critical thinkers.
We are critical thinkers. We are curious about this moment.
We are coming together to take an active, responsible role in freeing our communities.
We are transforming to meet the moment.
We are bonded with Black women and all black people in the fight for true freedom.
Black people who choose to fight for the enemy or use our struggle for personal and financial benefit need not apply.
So we are not rooting for everybody black. Am I right?
We're not.
Not everybody.
We're not.
We're gonna talk about a few people tonight. So tonight, so tonight we're discussing a new era of rebellion, 2014 through 2020. So when we were asked to take on this task, we thought it was awesome, incredible, exhilarating, right? Not just because this is an important era for all of us, not just because it happened to be the last class, so we're supposed to be the finale, right? But also because this is an era that we are living, that we are squarely in the middle of. Not just Ekundayo and I, but each one of us are in this era. We are making this very era that we're talking about. We are this new era of rebellion. So I added a particular weight on our shoulders because we're discussing, we're analyzing, we're critiquing not just historical actors in black and white film, but we're talking about our friends. We're talking about our comrades. We're talking about our organizations, our strategies. We're talking about Ekundayo and I. I have some things I need to tell him, okay? A note as we begin. It is objectively impossible for us to include everything that ever happened over that period. We won't be able to do it. We cannot do it. There were decisions that were made about what instances, what moments of tumult were important to include in this conversation, right? But just because they are not included doesn't mean that they're not important. There will be organizations, there will be people, there will be moments that were transformational, radical, changed everything about everything, but we weren't able to include them in here. It doesn't mean we don't think that they are very important. Another note as we begin, we're organizers. As you heard, we told our story a little bit at the beginning. So we believe in the power of storytelling. We also believe that there is a deep human cost for every story that we're talking about. These are just not numbers. These are not just nameless faces that are dead in the street. These are humans. These are individuals. And we're going to do our best as we tell the story along a chronology to bring the names, the spirits of those people into the room. So as I said, there's going to be a little bit of work that we're going to do together. So we're going to ask that you turn to your neighbor, turn to a neighbor, say, hey, neighbor, thank you. Okay.
We in here.
Okay, this is good, right? And I want you to ask your neighbor or answer. You have 3 minutes each, so you have about 6 minutes total. What were the dynamics, the events, the moments that brought you into consciousness, that brought you into this moment, right? So each of you have 3 minutes. The question is up here. What were the dynamics, the events, the moments that brought you into consciousness, brought you into this moment? And go. How you feeling?
We here.
Oh, right. I guess we got to take keep time.
Okay. Shaking the jitters off.
Very much so. I'm feeling better. Okay.
All right, if you haven't switched, this is a time to switch. If you haven't switched yet, it's a good time to switch. All right. If you can hear my voice, say power to the people.
Power to the people.
If you can hear my voice, say power to the people.
Power to the people.
All power to the people.
All power to the people.
Yeah, it'd be nice if maybe 2 or 3 of y'all, I say 2, let's start with 2, can maybe share, if your neighbor consents to share, which I talked about. Maybe share your neighbor's story, how they came to consciousness, how they came to this moment, to this movement.
That's powerful.
See if you was listening. Or was you?
Oh, we have a hand. Thank God. Over here.
Oh, yeah, we have a hand back here.
Grew up Jewish and, learned really well about the Holocaust and learned really well about what genocide looks like and how important it is to, fight against that. And then growing up as a teenager, he started to see things differently. And so, yeah, he became conscious through that upbringing and looking at the way that things are and realizing that it's not what you preach isn't what you practice, I think. Did I say it well? Okay.
Awesome. Thank you.
Amazing. Do we have one more? One more. That's beautiful. Okay. Oh, we do.
We got one right
here.
here.
We are.
Yes. Getting them steps in.
So my neighbor, Jasmine, she shared that she was radicalized by the killing of Tamir Rice during college and all the ongoing police violence during that time, and then eventually what would lead up to the 2020 uprisings, which we'll talk about today, and wanted a revolution, wanted to overthrow the system, a change of conditions, and just have something different. People not dying by the police every day. Is that right?
Okay, yeah. Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yeah. One of the revolution. That's very prescient for the conversation that we're gonna have.
Indeed. And actually, we got some quotes. So, we want some volunteers? Some volunteers. We have 2 quotes, so we can get a volunteer. Yes, we got a volunteer here. We got 2. All right. So one volunteer can read the first one, and then for the next one.
There are many rebellions, fewer revolutions. Rebellions are usually associated with fighting a good fight, revolutions with winning it. We remember many slave rebellions across the Americas, but only one slave revolution. We celebrate the heroism of Nat Turner and Dessalines equally, but recognize that their achievements are of different orders.
Yes.
Good up for
brother
Eugene.
Yeah.
All right.
We see this quote very much paramount to the conversation we're going to have today, right? We call it it's called an era of rebellion for a reason, not the era of revolution, yeah? Second quote.
We carried it on through the lies and sellouts, the mistakes of the madness, through pain and anger and frustration. We carried it on.
And when me and Phil was working on this, we was like, yeah, the madness,
and
the mistakes, but we carried on, right? The struggle is messy, and if we didn't continue to struggle, then we wouldn't be here. We would have been quit, right? And so we struggle on. So I want to take us through a flow today. What we doing, right? And a bit of the flow, but also what guides us, right? Talking about what is our why? Why are we actually having this conversation? So our first question, right, is what dynamics birthed the spirit of 2014, right? And for the first part of our presentation, we're going to take you through somewhat of a linear timeline. And we're going to start not at 2014, we'll get there, right? But we do want to talk about this timeline. And we pick these particular moments because we see that it does raise Black consciousness, and it spreads this pretty much wide sense of and feeling of distrust with the American system, particularly the American democratic system. And the years after that sparked a rebellion, right? And this collective anger, this collective angst and anguish that we have, right? Second, what strategies, tactics, and demands, or lack thereof, were emblematic of the decade? What does leadership look like during this time, or lack thereof? And then lastly, what were and are the political pitfalls and opportunities that are before us? We're going to exist in the dialectic constantly, right? We have noticings, also critique, right? There is no all or nothing. We always live in a balance somewhere. And so that's what that's what our timeline, that's what our analysis will show today. Cool?
How's that sound? Say all right now. Okay, so let's get to it. All right, so we're going to start not in 2014, but we're going to start in August of 2005 in the middle of the Atlantic, where a tropical wave joined up with the depression. On the morning of August 24th, that depression became a tropical storm. On August 25th, the tropical storm became a hurricane. And by the time it made landfall in Louisiana, just after midnight on August the 29th, 2005, it had become a very large Category 4 hurricane with sustained winds of 145 miles per hour, and it now had a name, Hurricane Katrina. Hurricane Katrina devastated the New Orleans Black community, breaching over 50 levees, causing widespread destruction, permanent displacement, and over 1,800 people dead. Most Black families would never see their homes ever again. Public housing was replaced with fewer lower-income units. Black-owned businesses were excluded from the reconstruction project. The entire public school system of New Orleans is what? It's private now. Media coverage criminalized Black residents while the government's response was delayed and inadequate at best. The disaster exposed deep racial inequities and was rooted in systemic failures. Make no mistake, yes, this was an ecological disaster, but the crisis was capitalistic, it was racist, and it could have been avoided.
The shape of the city has changed dramatically, tragically, and perhaps irreversibly. There's now over 25 feet of water where there was once city streets and thriving neighborhoods.
I hate the way they portray us in the media. If you see a Black family, it says they're looting. See a white family, it says they're looking for food. And you know, it's been 5 days because most of the people are Black. And even for me to complain about, I would be a hypocrite because I've tried to turn away from the TV because it's too hard to watch. I've even been shopping before even giving a donation. So now I'm calling my business manager right now to see what is the biggest amount I can give. And just to imagine if I was if I was down there, and those are my people down there. So anybody out there that wants to do anything that we can help with the setup, the way America is set up to help the poor, the black people, the less well off as slow as possible. I mean, this is Red Cross is doing everything they can. We already realize a lot of the people that could help are at war right now, fighting another way, and they've given them permission to go down and shoot us.
And subtle, but in even many ways more profoundly devastating, is the lasting damage to the survivors' will to rebuild and remain in the area. The destruction of the spirit of the people of southern Louisiana and Mississippi may end up being the most tragic loss of all.
George Bush doesn't care about black people.
Please call.
In the past few days,
You know, I think we missed the old Kanye. We'll say we missed the old Kanye. So for maybe the last time in his career, Kanye said what was all on our mind. Transcripts revealed that President Bush was warned that the levees would break, as were the governor, as were the mayor. Bush later flew over the devastated area. You all remember the flyover in Air Force One. We don't remember that he was on vacation and he was forced to come back from Texas to D.C. So he literally just flew over to survey the damage. We watched the city suffer. Our anger grew. The contradictions were laid bare, and black consciousness spread.
The city has changed.
Sorry. In December 2006, some 3.5 hours northwest of New Orleans, in a small town of about 3,000 people, a city called Genesee, Louisiana, 6 black students were arrested and charged with the attempted second-degree murder for beating a white student who briefly was hospitalized and was released the same day. Anybody remember this? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. The black students, known as Genesee, faced extremely harsh charges. And despite the white students' quick recovery, right, this case sparked outrage. Full-on mass protests in 2007 in September, around 20,000 people, mostly black, marched in Jena, making it one of the largest demonstrations in years. This case received national and international attention, and it was fueled by black radio, blogs, social media platforms. Again, we talking 2007, so we talking MySpace,
yep.
Black Planet.
Black Planet was on it.
You know what I'm saying? Maybe Facebook-ish, kinda, right? So we talking at that time, but it was spreading. And so again, our anger grew, right? The contradictions were laid bare, and black consciousness spread. I want to highlight this brother here. His name is Theo Shaw. He was 17 when he was arrested. He spent 7 months in jail during this time. He was one of the Genesee. I bring him up because, again, right, as organizers, we want to make these connections to people, right? Yes, this was a moment. This was a moment that politicized folks, that raised the contradictions, to show that the state and the government and the courts don't care about our folks in a particular way, right? They use Genesee as a way to use the kind of colorblind theory, right, at the time. I want to raise this brother because he's a comrade of mine. In 2014, I met him through the National Juvenile Justice Network, and we were in the same cohort. He was a little younger than me, probably was in 28, whatever. He was finishing law school. And I remember him talking about his experience and why he decided to go to law school, right? And now, again, I don't know the story of the rest of his brothers that was arrested at this time, right? But at this point, at this moment, he decided that he was turning that pain into power. And not to isolate his story, but this is the relationship I have for him, so I want to share his part of the story. And today, he's a staff attorney for the Public Defender's Office in Washington, D.C. And if you know about being a public defender, you know it ain't no joke to do that work. And he's doing the work of the people to make sure that what happened to him, people have proper representation, right? So I want to make sure that this brother get his flowers for what he went through and how he want to contribute to the struggle today.
Yeah, shout out Theo.
Mm-hmm. Moving forward in our timeline, on March 2008, after years of reckless banking practices, deregulation, and a housing market built in unstable foundations, y'all know where I'm going here. Mm-hmm. The cracks once again began to show. Millions defaulted on their loans and their mortgages, mass foreclosures, wiping out generations of home ownership. Many of folks for the first time buying a home who may never again buy a home after this moment, right? So
enter Barack Hussein Obama. Hope and change. Millions of Americans tired of business as usual, hoping against hope that this person would really usher in a new era of transformation. They voted for a black man, some of them twice. He spoke of transforming the country. He wasn't revolutionary or radical, but his rhetoric touched a nerve with millions of people who had lost their homes or were tired of Clinton's war on welfare and the Bush's war on terror. Mm-hmm. Now, Obama is put forward as a solution to these compounding crises that we're talking about, ecologic crisis, right? A crisis of our injustice system, a crisis of the economy. He represents one tendency that we're all really familiar with in response to the civil rights and the following Black Power era, that of co-optation and incorporation. That's how you get pictures of Barack Obama with Malcolm X. We've seen it at every restaurant.
Martin Luther King.
And Martin Luther King.
And Bob Marley.
And they all thinking.
They all like
They all thinking. Every grandma got that shirt. But that's how you get it. Right?
Every children's book.
Yes.
Every children's book.
Yes.
Same thing.
We dreamed of this, brother. We dreamed of him. We made him in a lab, and here he is. He was presented as a symbol of how far we had come as a country. Yet, as we know already, he had no answer, no way to address the racial, the ecological, the economic crisis that resulted from the failed policies of this capitalist empire. So as we all know, all assurances of hope and change were lies and fake populist language. Mm-hmm. Several key figures, you all remember who was in that cabinet. He had a who's who of how to fuck up a country. He found them. Timothy Geithner, he found him, said, look, I'm gonna put you over everything, right? Lawrence Summers. Mm-hmm. Ben Bernanke was a holdover from Bush. He said, you messed it up so you can fix it. Come on back, right? Black families lost over half of their wealth. Actually, somebody want to read this? It's depressing, but somebody with a good voice, read it. Thank you. Sorry.
Black families lost over half of their wealth, largely due to predatory mortgage lending and mass foreclosures that wiped out generations of homeownership. Entire neighborhoods were hollowed out, and unemployment in Black communities soared. Public services were slashed through austerity policies, leaving those already vulnerable with even fewer resources. Wealthy individuals and corporations received massive bailouts. The result, a deeper racial wealth gap, expanded inequality, and a clear message that the economic system protects those at the top while exploiting those at the margins.
We remember this, right? It wasn't that long ago. We know that America runs on amnesia, but we remember this. This wasn't that long ago. Millions of us who graduated, who thought we would have jobs. I know, it's just a segment of us, right? But that was gone, right? Millions of people lost their homes. These are not just numbers, right? This isn't just statistics. These are families, these are neighborhoods, these are communities that will never, ever have that stability ever again. Brother Ekundayo.
Yeah, and to want to make sure that though this started in 2008, this problem persists. We are still in this depression, right? Mortgages are crazy high right now. Any form of housing, actually all of our needs, food, shelter, it's all high, all of it, right? So this isn't a moment in time. None of this is a moment in time. I think that's the point that we're getting to. This political, this social, these economic, all of these ecological crises, right? They're not separate. We're saying it in that way, but we still here. It's the same thing, right? So I want to make that clear. I want to personalize this as well, right? Again, this is the point of being an organizer, right? You personalize it to connect, right, to a particular issue, to connect to a particular struggle. My mom lost her home during this time period. This was, and I don't know all the facts, but I believe this is the first home that she bought. My parents had a house. I'm not even sure they even owned it, right? I need to ask these questions. But I know she owned this home, her and her partner. She had this home for a couple of years before this started to happen. Her mortgage doubled. She couldn't pay it. She lost her home, right? I remember the emotional, Not even just the financial thing. That's whatever. Money is whatever. The emotional piece of losing her home, of not having a place for her kids to go. She imagined her grandchildren being in this house. She imagined being in this neighborhood. No more. No more. Right? And even to this day, she still deals with the trauma of losing all that hard work in her 40s to get this house, being a social worker, serving the people with a certain level of chemical dependency, right, that need that support to do that hard work, and for it to just be gone, just like that, by a corrupt bank in Cleveland, right? And what happens, right? She loved Obama, but Obama ain't love her back, right? So our anger grew, the contradictions lay bare, and our Black consciousness spread. Guantanamo will be closed no later than 1 year from now. That's what he said.
This is talking cash. Bro.
Yeah, talking crazy, right? Change abroad was a mirage, right? Barack Obama withdrew troops in Iraq, but sent them to fight ISIS, which obviously we know they created, in a sense, right? To make it plain or make it short, which also escalated the war in Afghanistan and expanded the drone warfare across several countries, often with massive casualties, right? Y'all may remember all of this, right? He obliterated Libya, doesn't get talked about enough, but he obliterated Libya. He failed to close Guantanamo. I won't say he failed. It was always lip service, so it's not even a failure. Let's start there. And he could continue to support Israel, right? His presidency marked from the large-scale invasions to covert tech-driven warfare, right? So maybe not boots on the ground, but now we just droning the hell out of people, right? And so U.S. troops don't have to necessarily be there, right? But this is the atrocities of the empire, right? Barack Obama, the Barack Obamer, right? Domestically, his administration deported 3 million people. That's the rough number here. We probably know it's more, but over 3 million people earning the name deporter-in-chief. And so while we talk about what's happening now, right, for so many reasons, our people absolved him as if he didn't do these things, right? So it's always important to remember we come back to this moment. Domestically, Black unemployment peaked at about 17% under his leadership, which was nearly double, right, of white Americans at that time. And it remained disproportionately high, reflecting an ongoing problem that we still have today, right? Oh, it's not yet, okay. So although, this was claimed as a historic moment, right, for the nation, we got a first Black president, he's running on a populist language. Quickly we learned that this is not the case, right? He signaled this post-racial society, right? That's so wild when you think about it, post-racial, right? But that's what it was, right? He ran off of that. He won off of that. He won twice off of that, right? And so and I think what's important that we remember that it don't matter who in office, this is an empire. That's all that matters. It don't matter who there. It's an empire, and they're gonna do the job of it, right? Under capitalism, that's how it functions. And so though he refused to directly confront structural racism, opting for a post-racial tone, instead, right, he chided Black people about personal responsibility, emphasizing values like hard work and family stability. Even when he did launch My Brother's Keeper, all of that money went to the same, Coonan Black organizations, the legacy organizations that actually amplify the individual advancement of these young kids, these boys, not a structural change, right? Has anybody, is your neighborhood changed? Any of these programs impacted any of the Black boys? Absolutely not, right? So that money was a waste. And again, this lip service. A quote here, having said that, brothers should pull up their pants. You are walking by your mother, your grandmother, your underwear is showing. What is wrong with that? Come on. He said that at Morehouse.
We need food. Pull up your pants, son. You understand? So we're going to move on with the timeline, right? We just want to remind us and ground us about the conditions, right, that create this tempest in 2014 or precede this tempest in 2014. In 2011, Troy Davis is executed by the state of Georgia. right? Things can happen so quickly that we forget the names, the faces, these people. His case had gained global attention, right? Again, the Obama administration stayed silent in the final days leading up to Troy Davis's execution. People demanded, people asked, just say something. And he didn't do anything. It was a disappointment. Yes, we shouldn't have believed that he would do it. Yes, he didn't have the power to stay the execution. But even in that moment where you had an opportunity to symbolically do something and say something, he sat on his hands. 4 days prior to the state-sanctioned murder of Troy Davis, hundreds of young people took over Zuccotti Park in what is known as Occupy Wall Street. Y'all remember Occupy Wall Street? Took over, swept over the world, right? So many of us were brought into the movement during this moment. One thing we don't talk about often, right? They talked about the haves and the have-nots, the 99%, the 1%, right? They popularized this conversation, this notion. But our sister Tenjiwe McHarris and other folks organized, right, a vigil for Troy Davis that coincided also with actions at Occupy, right? And these two moments converged, not just symbolically, but literally here in the streets of New York. These moments, right? A great grave injustice, right, that many of us were witnessing, right? Converging on a conversation about the economic crises that this country is going through, right? These are moments that are very, very important and very instructive for us. These moments of rebellion, these moments of anger, these moments of consciousness spreading, right? And it happens here. It happens here in New York. And so many things do, not everything, but so many things happen. Somebody want to read this quote from our good brother Brandon King from MXGM? Please.
There it is.
There it is.
Before the
it's kind of on.
Okay. Before the Troy Davis execution, I feel like Occupy had a completely different dynamic, says Brandon King, a member of the Malcolm X grassroots movement who was arrested that night. In the aftermath of the execution, says King, the conversation about police violence and militarism became more apparent.
So we're remembering these moments. Are you jogging your mental and your physical and your emotional and your spiritual memory of this time, right? Where so much was happening. Almost every time you went on social media, on your Twitter or whatever, something was happening. People were moving. And it was obvious that the administration had no answers. They had absolutely no answers for the compounding economic, ecologic, and social crisis that it created, that continue, that were exacerbated by the President of the United States, this administration, this empire. Then came February of 2012. Trayvon Benjamin Martin was walking home from the store when he was hunted and murdered by the village vigilante George Zimmerman. Now, millions of us took to the streets. So this is an important moment for myself. I will never forget the moment that I heard Trayvon screaming on that call, the 911 call. He was screaming in the background. I will never forget that moment. You don't forget these things. This is a time before we were numbed out, before you can just go to your social media, see a bachelorette party and a baby being blown up on a beach, before all of these things were just pacifying us. I heard someone crying. So many people around this country heard this boy crying, saw his face, heard his mother and seen his mother and his father crying, right? Saw that he was not going to be arrested, right? And rose up and said that this cannot happen. Our anger increased. The contradictions were laid bare, right? And millions of people rose up. We rebelled. We were angry, right? This is a very, very important moment for me personally. It may not be the most important moment for you, but we all have these different moments. I'll never forget this time, right? This is where I come into the movement. This is where I meet so many of you all, right? This is where singularly responsible for me having the privilege and the honor to be serving as a comrade and to be here. This moment transformed me. He didn't ask for this, right? He did not ask for this, but this moment transformed so many people, right? So many of us. And once again, the empire had no answers. They had absolutely no answers. Some of us still believed. 2012 was the re-election year. We forget. We were pissed off, but he still won again. Some people say, oh, he couldn't do all that in the first administration. He had to be chill.
He had to play the game.
He had to play the game, man. You don't understand, brother. He's a lawyer, so he got to be pragmatic. He got to work. The Tea Party is they're holding him down. He want to do all the stuff, but he can't do it. Just wait. We believed. But once again, they had no answer. He had no answer behind the neoliberal playbook of pleasantries, doublespeak, and bloviating. He preached pragmatism. All the while, the economic, social, and political crisis continued to grow and deepen, and Black people, working people, immigrants, women continued to die or live half-lives under his watch. And what did he have to say?
My main message is to the parents of Trayvon Martin. You know, if I had a son, he'd look like Trayvon.
If he had a son.
All of us as Americans are going to take this with seriousness it deserves.
An eloquence of vapidness, a brilliant speaker of saying nothing, right? But he pacified, once again, our anger grew, the contradictions were laid bare, and Black consciousness spread.
It's you know, putting this together, it's always hard to pivot from Trayvon to continue the story, to continue the timeline. It's always hard. Yeah. So I feel that weight up here. You should feel that weight. We always feel the weight, right? That's why we do what we do. I'm gonna keep us moving. Fight for 15.
Mm-hmm.
So it's easy to forget so much was happening. The last three things we said is in the same year.
Mm-hmm.
This is in November, right? In November of 2012, in this great city of New York, roughly 200 fast food workers just walked off the job, demanding a wage of 15 minimum. Mm-hmm. But what's important to highlight is that they also wanted a union.
Come on.
Right? After a while, all you hear is fight for 15, and it's just about minimum wage. No, they wanted labor power. They wanted power, mm-hmm. right? That's the part that, you know, people, Bernie Sanders or whoever, can run off of, but they don't mention the union part. They don't remember the labor part, right? So I want to make sure that's clear, right? This movement is important to highlight because over the next decade, we have a series of strikes. And it's not that strikes weren't happening before. We've been striking for centuries, right? So it's not that that's not the case. But this also is a moment that teachers were striking, right? You got Amazon, you got Starbucks, mm-hmm. right? You got the auto industry, right? You have a series of strikes that happens over the last decade, right? So I want to make that clear. We repeat the expansion of the American capital. I want to repeat this, right? That the American capitalist system is built on Black death and exploitation. It's built on that, and it always will remain so until we take this place down. This is the structural reality that cannot be ignored. Moving on. In April 2014, the city of Flint, Michigan switched its water supply from Detroit system to, switched the supply from to Detroit system to Flint, a river that, all to cut costs, right? This is always about money. It's always a cut cost. But immediately residents noticed that their water supply was tainted, mm-hmm. right? The discoloration, the smell, right? And as they made complaints over that year, within that following year, they did their own independent tests, right? And they can see that it was that the lead levels were high, that lead was in the bloodstream of the kids were at high levels, right? It was having many health issues during this time period. And even though they switched back towards the beginning, I think January 2016, they switched it back to Detroit, it was a done deal. It was already a done deal, right? The lead pipes in Flint were corroded. It was a done deal, right? At this point, almost 2 years later, then you get Obama making a statement, and I often remember this, making a statement of a state of emergency around it, mm-hmm. and then eventually, right, he does the, I can drink this water.
That filtered water.
Yeah, filtered water.
That good filtered water.
That he probably got off of whatever, probably not even from the city. So, but again, right, we have this ecological crisis. And here we have a statement from one of the residents. I'm worried about my people. I'm worried about my aunts, I'm worried about my friends. I'm worried about the babies, the children that go to our schools. There's no one is safe, right, from this water crisis. So that moves us to this last stage here that we want to mention, right? Anybody want to read this quote?
Thank you.
The oppression of Black America is
is so central to the country that the struggle for Black liberation has often acted as a detonator, so to speak, setting off broader social struggles throughout the system. In today's volatile mix, the charge is now rigged to blow away may be too difficult for capitalism to withstand. Per year 201.
What we want to highlight, this quote is perfect because what it highlights and what we wanted to highlight through this linear timeline is the momentum, right? We keep repeating the contradiction, the raising of consciousness, the anger, right? It started to be contained in a particular way, and then it begins to explode, right? This is what Eugene is talking about, right? And that usually happens through Black struggle, right? The oppression of Black America. And then we get to a point, right, where we decide that we want to escalate, that we want to escalate, right? Every 28.
No, how many of us remember this? You all remember this? Okay.
Every 28 hours, a Black woman, man, or child of the United States is executed by a person employed or protected by the U.S. government. Again, MXGM.
So we're at 2014, and it doesn't stop, right? It's hard for us to put constraints on time in this way, but we make it to 2014, and once again, we're here in New York. You all keep showing up. Eric Garner is killed. Banned chokehold. His final words are what? I cannot breathe. I can't breathe. That same year, August 5th, John Crawford III is killed in Beaver Creek, Ohio, in a Walmart. They launched a police sit-in, our comrades in Ohio, an 11-mile march by Ohio organizers and community members. And on August 9th, 2014, in Florissant, Michael Brown is fatally shot by Ferguson police officer Darren Wilson. Witnesses say he had his what? His hands up. His body is left on the street like a carcass for 4 hours, sparking outrage in the community and an uprising that lasted for months, an uprising of working class people. Right? I went there. What we witnessed there was unlike anything that any of us really have ever seen unless we were there, right? We saw ministers try to shepherd the march and get yelled down, right? We saw leaders of historic institutions attempt to corral the march and corral the energy. It could not be contained. Ferguson was and remains a very important touch point for each and every one of us. They deserve far more than they have gotten, far more than they have received. Right? But the very reason why Ferguson organizers and that place has been treated like it has is because what it was and what it is. The powder keg that it was and that it is, right? What we saw, what we witnessed, what many of us experienced there, we had never experienced and thought we would never experience on American soil, right? The weapons of war, the pincer formations aimed at everyday citizens in the aftermath of August 9th. And in November, 12-year-old Tamir Rice was shot in a drive-by by Cleveland police. If you've seen the video, it's nothing else but a drive-by. They barely waited until the car stopped before they were out shooting this young man.
The killings continue. Excuse me, the killings continue. In 2015, Walter Scott was shot in the back while fleeing a traffic stop in South Carolina. Freddie Gray, this is also a massive uprising in Baltimore. And this is at the hands of Black folks, Black pigs, excuse me, Black police.
Yeah, Black pigs, pigs. Burnt pigs, yes.
In custody, right? This happened while he was in custody. Sandra Bland was found dead in Texas jail after a routine traffic stop. In 2016, Alton Sterling and Philando Castile were killed in back-to-back police shootings, day by day. That further exposed, again, the dangers of being Black and a routine stop or any type of routine or any type of activity engagement with law enforcement can leave you dead, right? Stephen Clark was shot in his grandmother's backyard in 2018, and in 2019, Tatiana Jefferson was killed by police through a window in her own home. Then came 2020, right? It's a lot going on. A lot going on in 2020. Trump is running for presidency, talking that bullshit, right? COVID-19 is in full swing. This year cracked open the country, right? Ahmaud Arbery was killed. 25-year-old Black man was hunted down by white vigilantes, right, while jogging in Georgia. And though the incident happened in February, it gained national attention in May. It's important to highlight that in this, though it happened in February, it wasn't exposed until many months later.
Mm-hmm.
The reason why that happened wasn't by happenstance. It's because of the movement. It's because of people's struggle. It's also because of social media and its utility. There's a lot of pitfalls, but for its utility, we able to connect the dots to be like, oh, this is what happens.
Mm-hmm.
The recordings, right? Again, we weren't passive. There was a lot of things wrong, but we weren't passive, right? And we were able to hopefully find justice for this brother, right? At the same time, Breonna Taylor was killed in her home by Louisville police. Since 2015, police have fatally shot 250 women. Later, like Breonna Taylor, 89 of them were killed in their homes or residences where they stayed, right, in their homes itself. George Floyd was publicly executed, and we know this very well, right, by Officer Derek Chauvin, who knelt on his neck for 9 minutes as this brother, this grown man, cried for his mother. Mm-hmm. That's a deep one. It's all deep, right? But to cry out for your mother takes you back to another place.
Mm-hmm.
If you're a parent, and if you're not a parent, you just know, right? To cry out for your parent like that, right? And this sparked one of the largest, if not, it's actually sparked the largest protest movement in U.S. history across 50 states. And so we say all of this in all seriousness, of all this violence. How does this help us make sense of what's to come? Mm-hmm. Right? We spent a long time flushing out 15 years,
mm-hmm.
and we just covered a fraction of the violence. We also covered a fraction of our response, a refraction of how we engaged in struggle, right? But over that 15 years, right, and how we laid it out, right, what is to come, right? And we see it as this new era, right, of rebellion.
Okay, so we've arrived here at this point, right? As he said, 2020 was many crises converging: international, medical, economic, a health crisis. Some people call it a plandemic. If you're at the barbershop, that's what it's called, a plandemic. But we understand that whether the disease was planned, the response absolutely was, or the lack of response absolutely was. The death and the destruction was all laid bare. The contradictions were laid bare. So this was a defining era for each of our lives, right? We went through this not just to go on a tour of trauma and some of the worst beats that we could experience, but also to remind us of what we've been through, right? How we got over, right? These were moments that we made it through, that we lived through. It only told a part of the story, as Ekundayo was saying. We were not passive, right? We were not merely objects upon whom earthquakes, upon whom hurricanes and floods and fires and vigilantes and the National Guard exerted their murderous means. We were subjects who organized. How many of you all remember we organized, right? We mobilized, we marched, we sat in, we died in, right? We protested, we occupied. We were the last people you wanted to see at brunch in Oakland. I don't know if y'all remember that. They was messing up all the brunches in Oakland. We were the last people you wanted to see at a Cardinals baseball game. They was messing up all the games there. We were the last people you wanted to see at a commission meeting or a congressional hearing. We disrupted, we raised contradictions, and we agitated everywhere that we went. A Black and a mass consciousness grew aware of the compounding crises, right? Seeing and experiencing the displacement, the destruction, the death of Black communities in real time. Some of us built organizations like the Dream Defenders. Shout out Dream Defenders. I'm partial. Shout out the Ohio Students Association, the Black Youth Project 100, United We Dream, Hands Up United, coalitions like the Freedom Side, the Movement for Black Lives. We built movements that seemed like at times they were poised to transform the very fabric of this country. We were there. We were present, right? We were not just on the sidelines, we were active. This emerged in calls for Fight for 15 and the Union, Occupy the Hood, Say Their Names, Bail Out the Mamas, Shut It Down, Take Them Down, Blackouts, Boycotts, Defund the Police, Abolish the Police. All cops are bastards, right? These are various expressions of our spreading mass consciousness. We rebel. I can recall us organizing a rally in like a few minutes. People was ready to turn. We would break out a street, we send out a tweet, and we would go out there and we would do it. That street would be done. That movie theater would be done. That event would be done.
That freeway is
done.
Clogged up.
Donezo. We did it. You're not getting home. Right? These were exhilarating times. We shouldn't forget it. This is a dialectic. There are many things. We're going to talk about the pitfalls, but these were intoxicating times. We felt like anything was possible. I did. We felt like everything was possible. Revolution wasn't coming. It was already here, right? We were not passive. These things did not just befall us, did not just befuddle us. We were there, ready to stand toe-to-toe in the arena of our lives. We were there. So how did we get here?
Fascism, baby.
Fascism is not coming. It is what? Nearly 90% of the cities and the counties have increased their police spending. You all know this, right? Despite a national call to defund. Since 1977, police budgets have rose 189%. Despite our calls to abolish, corrections has increased 346%. Military spending has doubled. At the same time that we are fighting a war in the streets for the hearts and minds of our people, we have a manosphere. I don't know if y'all know about the manosphere. That's a whole other talk. But they are raising generations of people online who hate everything that we're talking about, right? Hate everything that we stand for. How did we get here? What went wrong? You ready?
You ready? Yeah. All right. Let's just all just take a collective breath.
Drink some of my filtered water.
We're going to spend some time now, this last phase, going over our own analysis of the rifts, contradictions, internal contradictions, our noticings of where the pitfalls are. We're going to flip it also and talk about the opportunities, but we're going to start with the pitfalls. And this is important as folks who are participants in the struggle, that those who should be critiquing it should be those that are doing it, right? Not academics that are not involved. I have nothing against academics, obviously, but I'm against academics that ain't about what we about for real, for real. So don't write about it and theorize it if you ain't doing, right? So what we're going to cover 4 categories. Those 4 categories include the combination of they include the combination of organization leadership as one, identity, class, and empire. We could have covered a ton of things, but we try to synthesize it into these 4 buckets, all right? Y'all still with us? Y'all still with us?
Pins out.
All right.
Pins out. Okay. There will be a test.
So we place huge emphasis on mobilization, awareness, and social media shares. It's a big part of it. In a way, do we allow people to half step? We almost did too much low-hanging fruit. If you can just share that thing, that's good enough, right? It's not. Right? Much of our strategy over the years has been dictated by the size and the scale of our of mobilizations and our actions. And at each point, right, we conflated the size of numbers of our actions with actual power, right? And mobilizations are powerful, and yes, they are a representation of power, but it's not a manifestation of it, right? It is not an absolute of this material change in the halls of power, right? In the halls of in the halls of power, essentially, right? And more importantly, it didn't change our material conditions, the way that we thought we were doing, the way that we believe so, right? And so that's the first thing, right? Overemphasis on mobilization, not enough on organization, not enough on container building, not enough, right, to actually pull people into the struggle in a strategic way. 2, we didn't confront the growing aversion toward membership, right? Organizations began, and the word of the day was decentralization, right? Non-hierarchical structures, and which is important to critique it, right? Because yes, there's a lot of patriarchy that exists in these structures, but like a lot of things that happened in this movement, we swung the pendulum way too much to the other side. And what happened was, right, is that though there was a critique, we out of practice. Don't nobody know flat structure for real. Let's be honest. Nobody has existed or practiced it, let alone being rigorous and disciplined to make sure that it happens. So you get a lot of flat structure with no actual system that operates, and you do this leaderless thing, right? That was a big part of what happened, right? the last piece here around leadership, liberalism and individualism became the order of the day. This ain't nothing new, right? This ain't nothing new. But it became the order of the day that happened during this movement. And so personal opinions, the lived experience, replaced strategies and analysis on political economy. This is my experience, became the only experience or the most important experience, right? And that's just not strategic. The Twitter and Instagram activists became seen as leaders, right? But not just leaders, but also the holders of knowledge, right? You got people in their PJs chilling in the bed, telling you what's what. They're giving you bite-sized information, but not the whole thing. A lot of what happened during our movement too, it bred this anti-intellectualism. And so you're talking about Angela Davis, you're talking about Claudia, but you ain't reading shit. And you actually are like, I'm not reading that. So you love George Jackson, you got the shirt on, but you're not gonna read. What are we talking about right now?
Fuck out of here.
What are we talking about? So that's what happened a lot of, right? And so it just really weakened our analysis collectively, right? And yes, getting that information out quickly on social media and maybe people are footnoting and making references, but ultimately it just weakened the spirit on taking the time to study, reading a book from page to page, and reading collectively, reading together, struggling with words you don't know. Kwame Ture, it was a question he had at an old lecture, and it was a brother was like, I ain't smart, I ain't went to college, I ain't did blah, 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 blah. What's up? And he like, those words you don't know, circle it, spend time with it, all of that. Take the time that it takes to learn it. I ain't just come out the womb like this. I spent time with the material. I spent time with learning. You got to do that work. And for some reason, there was a lot of not wanting to do that work. Second, identity. We anointed, and all of this piece around identity, I want y'all to hear me very clearly.
Very clearly.
Very clearly.
Super clearly.
Do not misunderstand what I'm about to say here, please, all right? We anointed leadership based on identity, cult personality, and celebrity. Malcolm X warned us decades ago. Celebrities ain't your leaders, fam, right? And that's, Beyonce doing the Black Panther shit, and it was all love. All the, and we're performing revolution, right? That's not it. We fully embrace what Dhoruba Ben Wahab would call leadership by victimhood, where families of the victims who mainly apolitical, mainly people who had no political agenda, didn't have any political analysis or training, right? Let alone not involved in an organization or a revolutionary formation, right? They wound up with a child or a husband or a partner or a loved one murdered by the police, and then they're thrust into the limelight and told to lead, right? There's a difference between centering those who are most impacted and putting a mother, a parent, an aunt in front and saying, we're gonna lead whatever they decide. That's just not it. That's not strategic. And actually it's dangerous, right? And it was very much dangerous. And so you have, you had the mothers of the movement, and yes, like, of course, Trayvon Martin mother and all of them are finding ways to deal with their grief and struggling for their kids, right? And so nothing is wrong with that, right? But the world that was built around them, right? The lawyers, the politicians, they just used it all as bad faith, right? Taking them having them talk at the Democratic conventions and all this other liberal garbage, right? Abusing their violence. Abusing their victimhood, right? And so that became a big part of the problem too. The second part here is the perversion of identity politics. I'm gonna go somewhere with this. What was meant to grow our movement has divided us. It has proliferated gender wars. Again, the black manosphere. Social identities dominated political identities. Instead of reinforcing each other, what Dr. Taylor said, I'm gonna quote Dr. Taylor here, the Combahee River Collective saw themselves as socialists, as a part of a broader left, but they understood that no mass movement for socialism could be organized without responding to the particular forms of oppression experienced by Black women, Chicano women, lesbians, single mothers, and many other groups. You cannot expect people to join a movement by telling them to put their particular issues aside on hold for the sake of ill-defined unity at a later time, right? Mm-hmm. Solidarity was the bridge by which different groups of people could connect on the basis of mutual understanding, respect, and the old socialist idea that an injury to one is an injury to all, right? Last on this piece, I want to quote Robin G.D. Kelly in an interview that actually he did with the People's Forum. When asked the question about race, or the question was, when asked the question of who are you, it was really a question about race, and he said, I'm a communist. Yes, he's a black man, but I'm a communist. So he's putting his political identity along with his other identities, right? And so, again, right-sizing or writing where the perversion of identity politics lay bare on our movement.
All right, now we get to the subject of class. You all still with us? Yeah. All right, so a lack of class analysis opened the door for counter-revolutionary elements to dominate the conversations about what success looked like for us. All right, so we understand that rest is essential, that rest and naps are crucial to our survival, but we must ask ourselves whether they are truly radical acts in the political sense, right? We understand that this is a positive, right? But is it the solution that we're all fighting for? These are the questions that we need to ask, right? We understand that buying back the block may feel like a bomb, right? A callback to a time of Black Wall Street. But is that the radical solution to what we are seeking, right? That has inserted itself insidiously into the minds of so many whose consciousness was arisen over the last few years, right? Bitcoin and gambling and all manner of different things, hustles, day trading, all the many plethora of ways that we've allowed other people to insert themselves into the grief, the anger that people have, the animosity that they have about the economic system. We've allowed them to come in, right? The radical aesthetics of a halftime show. I enjoyed it. It was good. But is that what we are looking for? Mm-hmm. Is that the solution to our problems? It may feel transformational in the moment, but are they moving us towards liberation, right? We can't just put radical in front of something and make it so, right? Okay?
Because they're not really getting at the root when they say radical.
No, they're not.
They're not talking about the real problem.
No.
It's all surface.
It's all surface. So just because, radical rest, you know what I'm saying? Radical walking. These are, it's a faster walk than the other walks, okay? It's a more determined walk, but that's not what we're talking about. It's intentional. There we go. All right, because of a lack of working class organizations and institutions, when organizations were built, they followed a nonprofit shape, form, and culture that's dependent on philanthropy, access, academic proximity, and celebrity to finance and grow. This is a self-critique. This is a critique of all of us. This is a critique of us, right? We followed a function and a form that by its very nature is the antithesis of the revolution that we want. We've got a lot of work to do collectively to break out of what we know as starting an organization that has a radical and revolutionary function, right? We built organizations that siloed our united struggle. I remember when I first got into the movement and started to learn what it meant to be an ED, people would ask me, what type of org are you all? What type of org? I wouldn't know what they were saying. At that time, I was saying a lot of things that probably weren't the most educated, right? But we're org fighting for justice. We're fighting for freedom. No, are you all a racial justice org or a economic justice org? Are you a criminal justice org? Are you an electoral justice org? So we willingly bifurcated our movement, right? We cannibalized each other. We competed against each other. We got chummy with different people in philanthropy, all at the whim of philanthropy, right? All with what they wanted, the new word. What is the new trend this year? Of course, maybe this year you're the shiny penny, but at the minute that you are not, what do you do? How do you make money? How do you resource? How do you scale? How do you grow your organization? And lastly, we didn't talk about Trump's first presidency. That was the big omission. Nobody demanded it, but much of this development is paired with the Democratic Party's destruction of the Sanders candidacy, right? The conflation of middle-class politics with working-class demands. And the main strategy of the Democratic Party, when we don't have a class analysis, they deal with us to neuter our revolutionary potential. Come on, join us, right? Come into our big camp. We're a big tent, right? We're gonna change. This party is a big party that can handle everybody. Without a radical analysis, we were torn. There are still people that don't speak because of things that happened during election years. Do we all collectively understand how ridiculous that concept is, right? On our last category for shortcomings and pitfalls, we have the empire. So our focus remained largely domestic, right? Now, this is a generalization. This is not everybody and probably not many of the folks in this room. But we had an insufficient analysis and emphasis on connecting struggles across borders, right? We witnessed many organizations, even immigration organizations, fighting for citizenship, right? But there was lack of analysis, or at least a popularization of an analysis that talked about why folks needed to migrate, right? Why folks were being shuttled across the world, right? And there were times, don't get me wrong, none of this is without anybody could raise their hand and say, no, my organization was doing different. I would say Dream Defenders. We went to Brazil, right? We went to Palestine. You know, we were different, but writ large, our movement didn't do enough to capture the vastness of empire and the way that we spoke about the issues that we were talking about. This limited the scope of our demands, the plans, the formations, and the coalitions. Think about how many homies we got all around the world that we could be aligned with, that we can be working with. And yes, we are doing that work. We're in a place that houses a lot of that work, right? But are we doing that across the movement? Does the homie or the person in your organization or the rank and file of your organization understand how the work they are doing is connected to South Africa, or is connected to Mexico, or is connected to other parts of the world? How much is that how we talk about our work? We failed to adequately address the imperial wars of aggression, AFRICOM, right? AFRICOM, SouthCom, the deportation of Black and African immigrants. I remember that Baji, that was Baji's, you know, that's what y'all do. You know what I'm saying? We'll come to your march, we'll come to your rally, but that's Baji that talks about Black and African immigrants. That's not, we'll do it, but that's Baji, right? That separation of our work. We didn't talk adequately about that, and that hampered the development of a true peace movement of our time, right? That was so intrinsic to movements of prior, right? Burning draft cards, Coretta Scott King leading. These were intrinsic to how our movement moved in prior incarnations. And while reparations entered the national discourse, the discussion was largely performative and lacked ideological grounding. That's how you get our dear brother Ice Cube, or the brothers with the American flag in every single one of their posts, the ADOS brothers. The ADOS brothers. Okay, that's how you get them dominating the conversation about what reparations look like. It's more than a check. And it overshadowed established organizations like Cobra, founded by our ancestor Chokwe Lumumba. All right. As we near the end, we want you all to remember, to recall, to feel that all is not lost. Right? We started with the shortcomings so that we could end on the places of opportunity, right? The places where we have strategic footing, the places where we can grow our movement, advance our aims. We are a testament. There is a deep, deep, deep hunger and a thirst for what we got, right? The work that we do, the world that we want to see, the world that we're building, the membership organizations that we are building are intoxicating the people. We just got to find a way to talk to them. We've got to be consistent in that every single day. And so in the same way that we talked about our pitfalls and our shortcomings, we're going to break up the places where we have and we will find success in organization, leadership, identity, class, and empire. So as I said, we've got to continue to build and stress the importance of mass member-based socialist organizations as the vehicles for revolutionary transformation. We will not win using blunted and stunted weapons provided by our enemies. The nonprofit function, the way that we hide, and we'll talk about that, the way that we conceal our politics, all of that shit is gone, right? What we have, the world needs. The world has always needed, and we need to be clear that we are the holders of it, right? We are the birthers of this new world. We have to embrace and popularize a leadership that is a function of taking responsibility, of remaining accountable to a base, of consciously developing the capacity and the potential of others. Leadership is a burden. It is an awesome responsibility that must be earned and learned in the struggle. We can't just give it and bestow it by branding, right? Somebody can say they're whatever they are, but who are you, right? Where do you come from? Whose are you? Where did you learn, right? What is your stewardship of this movement and what does it look like? And we also have to be thinking long range about leadership, right? Gone are the days, I know I joked about rest and naps and all those other things, but gone are the days where we'll allow people to be martyrs for our movement, right? We must create the capacity of a leader. A leader does not have followers. A leader develops more leaders, right? And so it's incumbent upon us to have the long view so we're not burning out and going and running to Jamaica or wherever. Costa Rica, I think Costa Rica was it. There's a steady hunger for strong analysis and reliable information in this moment of disinformation, right? Folks want to know what is and what it is, a sober analysis of what's happening. Black Men Build on a weekly basis has Theory Thursdays, right? We see this stage, this room, housing the conversations that are essential, and these rooms are packed. Every month, B&B is doing mass calls. Every month, people are giving the information, and people want the information. This information doesn't just spread in minds and in ears that do not want information. That is the core, and we have to be prepared to provide it. We have to continue to fight against anti-intellectualism. We have to embrace the organic knowledge that our people already have. They know their consciousness is there. They know the world is fucked up. They know that what we were doing before is not going to work. They know that who was doing it before doesn't want it to work for us. So how can we be there to affirm, to advance the work that is already happening and the work that and the animosity that people are already feeling, the earned madness that they feel? Social media is an important front. We cannot abandon it. I know folks like myself, I don't have TikTok, so I just be talking all mad stuff about people who are doing all of that. Look, our people are there. Our people by the millions and the the millions are getting trained in a way of seeing the world that is not our worldview, that is surely destructive. And if we are not on social media in some way, if we are not in the place where our people's eyes and ears are every single day, where your eyes and ears are every single day, then we will continue to lose. We will absolutely lose. We have to continue to support independent institutions like the People's Forum. Y'all have a link? People can support? Okay, all right. We have to uphold media outlets like Black Agenda Report, Black Liberation Media, and Breakthrough News. And lastly, on this point, our movements would not grow without being watered by the wisdom of our elders, our political prisoners, many of whom still fester behind the walls. Our brother Hiram, in one of the videos that we put out a few years ago, talks about what is a movement. There's been no successful movement for revolution that did not work every single day to free their political prisoners. Who are we, right? Who are we to gallivant about the world while the people who laid the groundwork for us still rot away in solitary confinement, right? And are released on the doorstep of death, right? And so we have a responsibility to grow the capacity to bring our political prisoners home, to provide for quality lives for them once they are home, right? And to integrate their wisdom into our organizations and our strategies.
Ashe. Yeah. To identity. Black feminist theory has offered a wellspring of knowledge for us, and particularly in this movement around patriarchy, around transphobia, around heterosexism, right, that operates and fractures our communities and harm our people. The deep work of transformation must uproot from all forms of domination and resurrect the legacy, right, of the Combahee River Collective, Queen Mother Moore, Claudia Jones. And what's important why we name them is that they were committed to organization, they were committed to socialism, right? Those are the two key things, committed to socialism, committed, and more things than that, but those are the two things that we want to highlight here. Our identity must broaden our understanding of solidarity, and it must not narrow it. A stronger revolutionary intersectional feminism has exposed the violence against our trans family, right? Highlighting the particular struggle that they face, and not just by law enforcement, but by us, by our own people, right? We can never just say it's them, it's us. Majority of violence that anybody face, even though we talk about law enforcement of any kind, the majority of violence that we all face is in our own villages. It's in our own homes. That's just a fact, right? Children, the most violence that children face is in the home. It's their parents, it's their caregivers. We can never forget that fact while we talk about the structure, while we talk about the system, while we talk about empire. We have a responsibility, right? Knowing that we also are perpetrators of that violence. This is a struggle that is so important, right? We talk about the leadership of Tarana Burke, along with many others that of survivors, right? That popularized a time that we needed to understand that what is happening to survivors in our own communities, but also with law enforcement. That if we're going to be engaged in this struggle, how do we engage in the struggle with survivors? And again, a lot of the survivors are survivors because we are the ones who perpetrating that violence, right? How do we deal with this dialectic, this dichotomy, this contradiction, right? As we talk about the struggles, we talk about law enforcement, we talk about the system and ourselves, right? This is something that during this era that we had to that contradiction was raised and we had to deal with it, right? And we at Black Men Build are dealing with it. We're figuring it out. We're working through it, dealing with it, right? Not running from it, but dealing with it.
On the subject of class, labor struggles and efforts like the Amazon warehouse workers continue to be a beacon of possibility for us, a necessary weapon within the class war. So we've got to continue to nurture this class consciousness, this class solidarity. We have to continue to do it and do this work. We've got to continue to fight against the propaganda of personal brands, right? That I am my own brand. I am Feel Incorporated, right? We have to fight against the freedom of the gig economy. I have 58 different jobs, and so I am more free and not less. I have no union, I have no health care, I have no work protections, but I am my own boss. We have to fight against that notion. We have to continue, no matter how hard it may be, my people, we have to continue to point out the contradictions of Black capitalism, right? We have to continue to talk about the nuance, right? We don't mean that we don't like trade. You all know how we talk about it, but we have to be clear that Black capitalism did not ever save us, right? We have to be clear about that. We got to shout out the campaigns of people like Claudia and Karina, right?
Yeah.
I voted for them. I did it. Okay, and there are massive amounts of people. I think we've consistently said, half of the country voted for Trump. And no, if you look at the numbers, there are massive millions of people who did not go out to vote. They looked at the options that were present to them and before them and said, no, I'm not doing it. Right there is our nugget of truth. That is, I would never do this. This might be the only time you heard this in their building. That is the true silent majority, right? Right? That is those people who are waiting, right, for another option. And we can afford them that other option. There is an increased dissatisfaction at record numbers with elected officials, in particular Democratic elected officials. There are fractures within their coalition, right? Jesse Jackson, you probably never heard that in here. Jesse Jackson once talked about rocks laying around, right? There are rocks laying around. There is a fracture in their coalition. They are weak. They are reeling, right? And we have a legitimate opportunity. We have to figure out what is our strategic place there. But there is an opportunity, a united front against fascism. Community organizations, independent institutions, economies based on solidarity and mutuality, progressive unions, independent political parties. These are all part of a mix that we need to discuss and an arena that we need to wage war in. We also, the practice of mutual aid connected to organizing, right?
Say that again.
The practice of mutual aid connected to organizing, right? Otherwise, right, we get co-optation, we get the nonprofit industrial complex, we get charity, which does nothing for all of us, right? We talk about programs pending survival, right? But we have to understand the nugget there, right? We were pointing out, and we should be pointing out the contradictions, what the state should be doing, but refuses to do, will not do, cannot do. We can, of course, do for ourselves, but we also must hold the state accountable, right, for their malfeasance, right, in our lives, right? Their apathy towards us, not ours towards them.
Last piece on empire, want to quote Antonio Gramsci. The old world is dying, and the new world struggles to be born.
Come on.
Y'all know this. It's like we in church right now. Now is the time of monsters.
Come on.
This empire is crumbling, right? The golden age of America is coming to an end. This is an opportunity, right? This is an opportunity for us, right? We no longer are in that place, but every crisis is always around the corner, right? But the legitimacy of this country is gone, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's not just here, right? We are not bamboozled. The world is not bamboozled by this country anymore,
Mm-hmm.
right? If we ever were, right? But I think even more so now, right? I want to highlight what the Aimé Césaire said, which he calls the imperial boomerang, right? Here's another opportunity, which is the connection between the empire, right? But also the domestic terror, that it is one and the same,
Mm-hmm.
right? It is the same coin, right? Just like the Democratic and Republican Party. And it's important to understand this on why Black communities, why our communities, right here and abroad, remain colonized, remain controlled, and administered by the enemy, right? It gives us a clear sight on why we see investments, right? We can make the connections to Cop City and the cuts of education and welfare, right? And the state of Israel. And then last thing, we must, and this is a big must, we must at this point, and what we learned from that era until now, we can never go back. We can never go back to not being 10 toes down on anti-imperialism.
Mm-hmm.
We cannot. It has to be a part of our analysis,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
It has to be. And just as colonial movements of the past inspire solidarity, right, in Palestine and South Africa, currently in the Sahel, and throughout the global South, people are demanding power, right, over their own destinies. And Black communities, organizations like the Black Alliance for Peace,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Shout out BAP.
Organizations like the Dissenters, the youth organization, right, uplifting the spirit of, right, this particular peace tradition, right, this anti-war tradition, right. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So as we've already discussed, American capitalism was built on Black death and exploitation. And when we witness the rise of Black consciousness, particularly post-Katrina, we are seeing a reemergence of what is a historic pattern. We began our conversation tonight discussing many rebellions and fewer revolutions. As we bring our conversation to a close, this Purrier quote meets the words of Du Bois. The slave went free, stood for a brief moment in the sun, and then moved back again towards slavery. We say to you that if we are to meet this moment, we must resist mere rebellion against symptoms and insist on revolution against the system. We must leave no stone of the empire unturned. Black rebellion has always been a strike against capitalism, against the violence, the exploitation, and the theft that have disproportionately targeted Black communities. This is not incidental. It is essential to how the system works. We know this. Naturally, we remain the primary source of rebellion against it. Repression breeds resistance. That is the tradition that we inherit. That is the struggle that we must carry forward. If we're serious about confronting the limitations of the nonprofit industrial complex, we must be honest about the necessity of building explicitly anti-capitalist socialist formations. No more hiding. No more bashfulness. No more coyness. No more whispers. We must proclaim that we mine our destinies in the ashes of the capitalist empire. Nothing less will do. We must proudly announce that we are new beings, and amongst us are new men who no longer labor under the weight of their feeble masculinity. Nothing less will do. We must dance in the light and the darkness of our magic, of our spirits, of our ancestors, of our stories. Nothing less will do. So in the words of George Jackson, settle your quarrels, come together, understand the reality of our situation. Fascism is already here. People are already dying who could be saved, and generations more will live poor, butchered, half lives if we fail to act. All peace to the people. All peace to the people.
All peace to the people.
All love 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 to the people.
All power to the people. All power to the people.
All power to the people.
Forward ever. Backward never. Thank you.
Thank you. Love you, man. Thank you.
We got one more slide.
So if I understood you correctly, it's time for a nap? All right, thank you so much, comrades. That was amazing. We have about 15 to 20 minutes, so let's do some Q&A.
Okay, we can do some Q. I don't know if I got 8.
All right, let's start off with any comrades in person. Okay, I see a hand here. Do you want to do, maybe we take 2 to 3 questions and then we pass them to you?
Okay.
All right, so we see one here. Any other questions? And I see one over there. Okay.
Hi, my name is Delorne. Oh. Hi, my name is Delorne. I'm from Bronx, New York. I guess I should do a little bit of introductions. Yay.
BX.
Okay, I actually am from Miami, Florida, but I live in
Yeah,
Bronx.
yeah.
You're like, huh? Okay. So you said a lot, okay? And what I want to talk about, so we can go from rebellion to revolution. Oh, sorry. So we can go from rebellion to revolution is we need to be the reality of capitalism. People need to feed themselves. People need to house themselves. People need to go to the doctor, right? And so this nonprofit complex that was created was because being an activist became a job, right? And it started paying people's lives. As the wealth gap has increased, you can't live for free. And so therefore people have decided they can't fight for free. And so I don't know how we go from revolution when money is, capitalism is like this chain that's like holding people back to an extent. And the last thing I wanted, so, that's a question. And then the last thing I want to say is about unity. A lot of times I hear people say, like Bernie doesn't say black enough, right? And then we know MLK, before he died, he talked about the Poor People's Campaign. So I see a lot of unity in like a union movement, labor movement. You talked about the $15, because that is like something we all suffer regardless of what race you are, some more than others. But like, again, money unites people and economic gaps unite people. And I don't know if that means we leave out race too much to gain like a people power in a large movement.
Question. Where's she going?
Thank you. Thank you guys so much. My brain is on fire. I really appreciate all the words. I'm reading a book right now called Black Macho and the Myth of the Superwoman by Michelle Wallace, and it's critiquing the civil rights movement and the Black liberation movement in the 60s, and it's written in the 70s. And I'm wanting to place a critique in this current moment. And she's talking a lot about the gender dynamics between Black cis-het men and women, and specifically how the civil rights movement and Black liberation movement was really focused on emasculation of the Black man and getting back what was taken from Black men in terms of their masculinity. And what her critique is that it was kind of limiting, because Black liberation is not something that can be handed to us from white people, because white people didn't free us. Our freedom has never been given by white people, so therefore it can't be returned. And so that's how we got things like DEI and affirmative action and stuff like that out of the civil rights movement, where it's like, we're building our place up. And I'm this book and your talk is just, my gears are turning, and I'm interested to know, I guess, what you guys think about applying that critique to this current moment, and how the idea of like gender dynamics, specifically the idea of the Black macho and Black masculinity has, especially in 2020, I think like it was very Black men centered. I'm not so much a question, but just talking about that aspect and that critique. Thank you.
I'm gonna take one more. So go for one more?
Oh, yeah. Oh, my bad. Yeah.
Hi, thank you guys so much for the talk. I have a follow-up question to your points about the lack of class analysis. I was really related to what you mentioned about the generational toll that, like, or the emotional toll that the economic recession in 2008 played on a generation of people. And as we are in the midst of really another time of mass financial or economic hardship, joblessness, people are unhoused. How can we, recognizing that toll is happening again, how do you as organizers meet people where they are when, this economic oppression as a tool of getting people to say, don't look at me, I'm a spectator, I don't want to organize, I don't want to do anything, I'm just trying to survive. How do you, obviously talks like this is an answer, but get people to find a place for themselves in organizing and struggle as a, when they're so confronted with their day-to-day survival. And we kind of see this pattern of once consciousness rises, that economic oppression sort of begins anew. Makes sense of the question.
It does. Makes sense. So really quickly on the first and even the most recent question around survival, the evidence shows that our people have consistently organized and figured out ways to survive, right? One quick note I want to make. Right now, the right wing, ideologically, online, et cetera, boasts millions of people who are supporters of right-wing ideas, right-wing thoughts, and the great number of them are surviving on crumbs. They have absolutely nothing, right? I think we do forget that, right? But we are talking about millions of very, very, very poor white folks, right? And now more Black people than ever and Latino people than ever are supporting an ideology, are supporting a movement, are supporting personalities who have no answer to their economic situation at all. And in fact, the answers that they have will continue to ruin and doom them. The only reason I bring that up is I don't know fully, and we can talk more about this, if it is our duty as a movement to find the answer fully for all people to survive, for them to be a part of our movement, right? I believe what we have to do absolutely as a movement, we've got to engage in aggressive, vast mutual aid efforts, right? To ensure that our folks have the food, the shelter, the clothing, the training, the education that they need to have a life, right? I don't know the capacity of every organization to be able to engage in that work, but I do think that every organization that considers itself a member-based or active in this time has to figure out what is the extent to the work that they can handle to have an answer to the fact that this person coming to your PE class doesn't know where they're going to eat. I think that is a question that we all have to wrestle with. I'm not trying to obfuscate that responsibility. But what I am highlighting is that, once again, there are millions of people who have no idea how they're going to survive, who are still at the feet of their way of seeing the world, right? And so while we have to engage with that question, a full stomach, a roof over your head, medical care, child care, whatever the many ways that Black men build in our hubs are finding ways to grow our capacity to engage in that work and in that effort around survival, we must bring people into organizations that we say will fight for those things and have the discipline, the rigor to be able to fight and win those things. Folks are in our opposition's camp because they believe that those people will do that for them. Even though all evidence points to the contrary, they believe that those people will do that for them. And they also, on the right, provide belonging, right? So there is belief and belonging. Now, I am not proposing that we involve ourselves in just selling people a dream. Quite the opposite. What I am saying is, though, that while we won't be able to answer every question about how they're gonna survive now, we have to build organizations where they believe that we are fighting and can create and will demand and create the world that provides those things for them and where they belong. I believe that both of those things are important. I don't think that is the only answer, but we will never have the resources that we need to provide for all of our people, right? We have to grow our capacity for mutual aid and also grow our capacity to be and engage people with smart strategy and be fighting organizations, right? People have to believe that the world that we want will provide them with medical care, will provide them with food, with housing, without exploiting and destroying the lives of other people. And I think that that is our duty in this moment, to try to walk and chew gum at the same time, to do both, also recognizing our shortcomings and also knowing that folks need to believe and to belong in organizations that are fighting organizations, that have a strategy, that are committed to winning.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. One of the things that is important, especially in political parties that are revolutionary in formation and in ideology, is there's a consistent practice of self-reflection, self-criticism. This is a practice that we just did today, right? In a larger scale, we're talking about movement and not particularly our organization. But that is key. That is key because we will always make mistakes. But the only way we sharpen and have accountability is that continual practice. To your point here about black machismo, essentially, I don't know what our OGs was on, but they couldn't chew gum and walk at the same time. They decided in many ways to be like, we're going to focus on just the men. We're going to focus on just race. The sisters, y'all got to wait. The gender stuff, the sex stuff, y'all got to wait. We got to deal with this thing first, as if we can't do it all. One of the critiques that we had, right, is this siloing of issue, economic, gender, X, Y, and Z, right, as if we're going to win that way. And all it does is it fractures us, right? And again, that particular struggle ain't new, right? But I think what we are trying to do and what we see is that we can do it all. We have to do it all, or we doomed. That's just what it is, right? And so you know, do brothers feel emasculated? Do they feel like they're not leaders or whatever? Can we have a critique that, yeah, maybe some things have been, the pendulum have been swung a little far or whatever? We got to just reckon with that. We got to reckon with it and right size it. And so I do think there is this this tension, right, that exists still around what comes first. And I think instead of thinking what comes first, we need to think broader, right, and not to water it down, but we need to be thinking not just one meal, but we need to be thinking the full pot. We need to be thinking about feeding all our people. Right, feeding all our people knowledge, being able to be able to expand our minds and think about all the things. We can read June Jordan and Malcolm at the same time. You know what I'm saying? We can read, we can engage, right, with our own transphobias while also still trying to work on men and how they think about taking care of their families and putting food on the table and being sweeter to their daughters and dealing with their traumas. It doesn't have to be a competition. When it is, we continue to lose, right? That continues to fracture us. So that's just, I don't know if that's getting to your point, but it is a historical issue that we've been dealing with, right? And the only way that we deal with it is to confront it, to be reflexive, and go back at it again.
I think careerism within the movement needs to die.
Yeah, I was going to mention that.
You can't.
It's a field now.
It is. It never worked, and the way it has grown, it just. I mean, we're struggling through it and with it within our organization, right? People need to survive, right? People are spending hours, days, months away from their families that they could be spending doing the work of our organization and other organizing. And we've been trained to believe that. In order to do that, yeah, you need healthcare. You need basic things to be able to survive. It will be very, very hard to go back to what organizing and how organizing once happened. You know, we have the benefit of working and learning from SNCC veterans, right? These were people who were paid $10 a month, right? Who survived off of the goodwill and the hospitality of the people whose homes they stayed in the rural South, who had very little, right? What we are asking and what you're asking requires a complete and what we're proposing requires a complete paradigm shift in everything that we know of as movement right now. We destroy all of the organizations, we destroy the structures, et cetera. Folks attempt to find a job in the field, in the market. You attempt to find a job or some other way to survive, and you do the work of organization when you're not at that 9 to 5. You know, or you grow an organization that garners and continues to nurture the respect of the neighborhood that you live in, and you sleep in one of their rooms, or you survive off of what you're able to raise from the selling of your publication, or the work and the services that you do for and behalf of the community. We know the answer to the question. It's just, you know, it's like two people who know they need to break up, and you're like, you know, we know what we have to do. It requires a destruction of everything that we know. Great financial precarity for everybody in this room that works for an organization. No retirement, no 401k, no vacations, no severance.
None of that.
None of that. That is what you're saying. That is what is really required, and the solution or a solution to the problem. It's untenable. It's hurtful. It's devastating. It will hurt me personally, right? But this entire industry that we've built off of destroying the industry that is built is a never-ending cycle of the snake eating its own tail, right? And so that's the only answer to the question is that we end everything that we know, and we go back to some of the things that have worked before for us, and finding ways to survive. Collective economies, mutual aid, cooperative economies, solidarity economies, you know?
Because, I mean, honestly, you know, having your own home, your own mortgage is just
not that fly.
It's not. It's not.
So much money.
You know, it's just too much, right? It is too much. You know, I say this last piece, and I know you got a hand here. Where we are, you know, Lenin talked about the professionalization or a professional revolutionary. This is not what he was talking about.
No, right.
It's not what he was talking about. But here we are, right? And I think a big part of that is going back to what we talked, the linear timeline, the wealth gap, the low wages, the inflation of everything. So we are dealing with the moral question on how do we have people put in 30, 40, 50 hours of struggle and not pay them? You got kids, you got this, you got that. How do we do that and not pay them? And what has happened is the movement has become a major employer, right? And we don't offer good services. We don't, right? Most of the time, not good benefits, healthcare. So we're not even doing that right. Not even well enough. Some do, right? So again, there's a major contradiction that exists within that. And then part of that too is because a lot of the labor industries, unions don't have power either. So it's not like we all can work in those spaces, or teachers or whatever, right? And we have developed a new way to have a skill to do work in mass. And honestly, we're not winning, right? So there is a major problem and critique there. I need to have a question. We have one question in the back. Was that time? Oh, we had time.
We're going to move to the Zoom questions. There's one question that...
Yeah, let's take maybe one or two from Zoom and then the last one in person, and then...
Yeah. Okay. So this question is from Vince. What or who are some of the forces co-opting the movement, particularly in the Black struggle today? Recently, there have been a lot of reactionary opinions that demobilize people, which seems to be a very different attitude compared to the earlier uprisings mentioned. And I think Kate had another question that might relate to that as well.
Hey, what's up?
I also had a question. If you could speak more and elaborate more on kind of the opportunity that this moment presents in terms of internationalism. Just because I feel like it's become impossible to ignore the connections between the struggles of working people, of Black people in the U.S. and the struggles that are happening in Palestine. And we're seeing this historic moment when hundreds of thousands of people are mobilizing like every week for a struggle that isn't even, it involves people in the U.S. but not actually has U.S. bodies on the ground in a different way that we've seen for other anti-war movements or even other domestic struggles. So I was just wondering if you could speak more on the opportunities you think this moment affords us.
The opportunity, what was the first question again? Oh, co-optation. Yeah. A lot of co-optation happens when people are not a part of organization. They just, and they engage in struggle as activists only alone, right? They don't have anybody they're responsible to. They don't have an organization they're responsible to. They just show up and they do things and they can say whatever. That's just not good enough. And so, you know, the co-optation also comes from corporations and the Dems, right? Then they just recently broke up the Black Lives Matter Plaza or whatever, you know what I'm saying? That was always never our thing to begin with. There's in Columbus, Ohio, there's a social justice park. There ain't one Black person highlighted on that park. This park was also done by the city. We ain't want that shit. You know what I'm saying? It's a softening. It's a massaging of our revolutionary spirit that things are progressing. Progress is not real. It's not a real thing. Nor is though we did a linear timeline. Time doesn't really function in that particular way. But the idea of progress, right, is a construction of whiteness. It's a construction of the powers that be, right? Ask any Aboriginal, Native American, Indigenous person, Black person, name any poor person. Have we made progress? We just, you know, the illusion of progress, that means you probably bought into the rightist the ideology, right? And so, yeah, the co-optation, I believe it happens on a variety of scales, but I think it happens a lot through governance, through politicians, through corporations, and then, you know, folks that ain't tied to any membership base or any type of organization where they have to be responsible for what they say and what they do.
To the second question around international solidarity, I think, once again, as always, we occupy a particular place in the belly of the beast. And so I think while marches, massive mobilizations in support of and in solidarity of Palestinians is key, I think we've got to strategically ask ourselves, how can we throw ourselves into the gears of empire and disrupt them truly? The movement has grown exponentially. Even, you know, from my small vantage point and experience, when we first started talking about Palestine within Dream Defenders, it was people literally asked us, why are you doing, you know, has nothing to do with what we're doing. And now you can't speak about it without people saying and conjuring it. So I think for us, it is real strategy for how we make U.S. continued support for Israel untenable, undesirable, unrealistic. I don't know all of the answers to that question, but I think that's the next level for us. I think there was a time, I would imagine, I can't pretend to speak for Palestinians, but I do imagine that there was a time that there was a hope that the amount of people who are out in the streets in support of Palestinian liberation would happen. And so we've reached that crest. So now what is next is how do we break up that connection, that direct flow of dollars and money from our country to their empire? I don't know those answers, and I don't think if we did, we should talk about them here now. But I think that is the next phase for us, even with a right-wing government. I think another thing I'll say, which may seem tangential, but our opposition, no matter who is elected to that space, figures out a playbook.
Yeah.
They figure out a playbook. That's really the most simple way that I could say it. No matter who is elected, they go back to the X's and the O's and say, all right, this is who we have to deal with. What do we want? Let's do it. We have recognized a strategic tendency on our side of non-engagement completely. Now, don't make me that person, right? Let's go meet with them. but we do need to figure out how we can draw a wedge and that the next 4 to 8 years or 12 years or 16 years are not completely wasted by, categorical, generalized non-engagement with that space. How can we create the conditions for somebody like that to not want to send? I don't know the answer, but it is a question that we should ask, and we should figure out. To me, that's the opportunity. The awareness is already there. The T-shirts are there. Everybody's got a keffiyeh. What is the next level for that? And I think that's the opportunity for us to ask those questions. I'll also say, I hope I don't have to do all type of caveats and nuance here, but Palestine, it also is not the only place in the world that is being actively destroyed and brutalized by the U.S. empire. And so the other opportunity is for us to continue to broaden our full understanding of what our dollars do to people in Haiti, continue to do to people in the whole of South America, across the continent of Africa, what we are truly doing to the world. It is our responsibility to be able to rattle off those countries, those names, those people, those death tolls, just like we have grown to do around Palestine and should continue to do. So that's another opportunity that we all have as well.
We are at the end of class, unfortunately.
Aww.
I know. But I do want to invite you for any closing comments or anything you'd like to share.
I've said enough. I'm grateful for the opportunity to be here and to be able to serve as one of the representatives of our organization, Black Men Build. This is a great honor of my life. I was incredibly nervous about this. This is a place and a space and a stage in which very smart and eloquent people who I respect and love and are frankly intimidated by have spoken. And so, I'm going to remember this for a great long time, and I'm just looking forward to drinks. So thank y'all.
Yeah, we can end it there. I just echo Phil. We don't have enough institutions. This is an example of an institution that we need to continue to build and model elsewhere. We need more movement incubating spaces. And so I'm honored to be here, to build with y'all, to learn. Again, I was extremely nervous as well. There's a lot of people here I admire. I hope I did our organization justice. I hope I did our people justice. Let's fight on.
Going. Thank you, comrades. Keep it going. Thank you so much, comrades. I mean, this was a spectacular class, and glad to have my two favorite comrades up with me. All right, so today we are closing out the first class of Module 4, and on Thursday we will have kind of our closing forum for the course. We spent a lot of time learning with and discussing with the instructors, but on Thursday we're going to discuss with each other and kind of solidify our closing points from the course. So I'll see you back here on Thursday. And then does anyone know what we're doing on Saturday? I don't think let me see, what they say in the chat? What are we doing on Saturday? One last time, what are we doing on Saturday? All right, DC, thousands and thousands of people will be in DC, and you do not want to miss this. This is a really pivotal time for this moment to really bring together the convergence of the Palestine movement, the free speech movement, and to really make a show of force in DC under the Trump administration. And it's imperative that each and every one of us are here. If you haven't gotten your bus ticket yet, please talk to any TPF staff, and we'll help you get set up, and we'll see you in DC. All right.
Don't you know, you're talking about a revolution that sounds like a whisper. Don't you know, talking about a revolution. It sounds like a whisper while they're standing in the welfare lines, crying at the doorsteps of those armies of salvation, wasting time in the unemployment lines, sitting around waiting for a promotion. Don't you know they're talking about a revolution? It sounds like a whisper. Poor people gonna rise up and get their share. Poor people gonna rise up and take what's theirs. Don't you know you better run, 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 run. Oh, I said you better run, 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 run. 'Cause finally the tables are starting to turn. Talking about a revolution. Yes, finally the tables are starting to turn. Talking about a revolution. Oh, no. Talking about a revolution. Oh, while they're standing in the welfare lines, crying at the doorsteps of those armies of salvation, wasting time in the unemployment lines, sitting around waiting for a promotion. Don't you know they're talking about a revolution? It sounds like a whisper. And finally the tables are starting to turn. Talking about a revolution. Yes, finally the tables are starting to turn. Talking about a revolution. Oh, no. Talking about a revolution, oh, no. Talking about a revolution, oh.